Oh, now I feel nervous. Okay, so do you want to clap with me? We can do the official clap together.
What?
We'll go like countdown 4, 3, 2, 1, and then clap.
Okay.
Okay, ready? 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice, we're rolling. Welcome.
Ooh.
So
This
sick.
is really a sick setup.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm
those
obsessed.
feel proper quality.
I get kind of like addicted to it, if that makes sense. Like I leave here and I just think I want to go back and just listen to my own voice.
Normally people are the opposite. They're like, oh, I hate listening to my voice, but I can see why this is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Definitely feel like it sounds more like what I hear myself as well,
Yeah.
and less when I hear myself on, I don't know, video recording of my iPhone. I think like, oh my gosh, like stop it.
Yeah.
But this definitely is different. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, like whenever you record a video and you like comment, you're like, oh my gosh. And then you watch that video back and you just want to enjoy it, but it's so embarrassing and cringy. No, this is a step up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So for people who don't know you, which is probably quite a few, I think, if mostly cyclists are tuning into this, Switzerland's most successful rower, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I get called. I mean, guess it starts with the question, what do you define as successful?
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of the medals and stuff I've won, yeah, probably. That's a legit description. But I always struggle with introducing me as like the rower, because for me it's a limitation. Like it limits me to just the athlete, and
Yeah.
I'm more than just the athlete. Like I'm a person, and kind of most and foremost a person and a human being, and the athlete is more like a subcategory of who I am. So yeah, I don't really like it if I'm introduced as like this rower and athlete and
Yeah.
like successful and blah blah blah, because that's just like outside shiny stuff. But to me, like success looks way different than just like winning a medal or a race or anything like this. So
But do you get recognized, or have you, like, what is that like? Is there, I mean, rowing is a little bit more obscure than most sports. Like, what's that been like?
yeah, I think now, probably also with the last 9 months, having gone through something that people can relate that has actually nothing to do with sports.
Yeah.
I think I get maybe recognized even more than before, which is crazy, but also something I personally like, because it shows exactly what I was
Wow.
just saying. Like,
Yeah.
I'm more than just an athlete. But it depends a bit on the region, obviously. Like, Switzerland is still quite small, and if I'm in like downtown Zurich, probably no one really knows who I am. But around here, I would say, yeah, probably people recognize me a bit more. And it also, I mean, we're still in Switzerland. Like, people are really modest and in a way respect your kind of privacy, I would say, maybe. Like, not often they come up, but often I realize like people are looking at me and like realizing who I am, like
Yeah.
recognizing me, but more like between, I don't know, their family or whoever they are traveling with, like talking about me, looking at me weird, and not necessarily coming up to me. But also there are like the odd people coming up to me saying like, hey, well done for what you've achieved, or stuff like this. Or it's like, it's always a little bit different. It's never the same, but in general, I know that people recognize me, but don't necessarily come up to me and say anything to me.
Yeah. And when do you think that kind of started in your career? Like, when did shit get real in that sense, like in that outward facing sense?
I guess it wasn't like one point. I think it was like just the accumulation of the years and the success in rowing that I had, and just being more in the media, because my sport, or like rowing as a sport, is very niche here in Switzerland.
Yeah.
So if you want to get recognized by the media, it's always connected to like results, medals, titles and stuff like that. And So you have to do really well for like big media like Swiss television picking it up, and then obviously you reach a big audience, but still you kind of only reach people that are interested in sport, which then is also again like a smaller circle, and then it needs like years and years for people to actually recognize you, because if you read something about someone once, it's like yeah, she won a medal. Like, it's nothing spectacular in terms of, like, doesn't stick with you because there are other people winning medals. So I think the combination of then, like, the success in sport and me also wanting to display, like, I've more to give than just, like, good results, and being open to talk about other things outside of like how many times do I train per week. That's when kind of it started building, and I guess like it took about 6-ish years roughly to, I guess, kind of build this name or whatever you want to call it, for people to recognize me. But I was really surprised how it like increased again, like from what I've experienced last December. So like that has really opened up, like I said, a new circle of people like knowing about me. Not for what I've done in sports, but what I've gone through in life or what happened to me. So that was quite interesting. So that has had at least as much of an impact on how much I get recognized as a world championship title had. So quite interesting.
But you kind of needed that title also as like
sure,
a point for that. I mean,
that's true. So if that would have happened to me without it being like on the back of my success, probably no one would really know about it. Or a much smaller circle.
Have you ever had to explain to anyone what rowing is?
Yeah, I guess in the beginning, and maybe not just explain, but more like correct, like the image they had in their minds of like, you gotta be really strong in your arms and stuff like that. And it's like, not really.
Well, it doesn't help that your biceps are huge. That people
but my quads are way bigger. Like if
true.
you compare those two, like I'm such a like dominant athlete, and like I have to laugh, but it's funny, like, when I was in the States in 2016, for example, like, people, because they're way more open, like, they just come up to you on the street, in the supermarket, like, hey, how are you? Or, like, nice quads, stuff like that.
No, shut up.
Yeah, for sure. Or, like, hey, you look so athletic, nice, and, like, high-five you for, I don't know, looking the way you look. So, I've had that in the States, like, about my legs, but over here, obviously, it's definitely... people commented more on my upper body, which, sure, I'm strong, but like my legs are just nothing compared to my biceps.
Crazy. Someone in the States just came up to you.
Like many people actually. I was like, I don't know. I was in California in 2016 for about 2.5 months, and I would say every other week someone like commented. Not in a bad way, just kind of like, I don't know, like, hey, I respect your good shape or something more like
impressive.
In that way. So,
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe we can explain to like anyone listening who doesn't know that rowing is kind of like a height advantaged sport, and you are slightly less than the normal, or like, how would you describe your genetic like predisposition to the sport or not?
I guess I start with like the numbers. Like obviously I'm 170, and some of the most successful single sculler, they're like 190 women. So really a lot taller than me. But for me, it's always been like rowing is not just about the height, not just about the physical aspect. It's a huge part, but there's so much more to it. Like the technical aspect is really important, especially in the single, where you need a lot of skill. Like you need to feel what you're doing. And I would say that, for example, like a tall person sometimes struggles with like the delicacy of smaller movements, or like being in touch with like, what is this arm doing, because it's so much further away from them, or something like this. And then also, I guess what would you call it? Like maybe the mental aspect, the mental side is huge. And because rowing is like this unique combination of strength and endurance, I think there's just a window for like people that are maybe neither nor, because I would say I'm like really much in the middle. So I am able to build like muscle, but I also have a good engine, but both are not like the most epic ever. Whereas there's people, they have like this insane diesel engine, like their endurance and like physiology is like amazing, and others, they are so strong. And I'm neither of both, but like I guess an ideal combination of both for rowing. So yeah, I think I just found my sport in a way, because I'm like, I suck at running so bad. Like, I can never do that. Probably quite okay on a bike, but climbing, obviously, because I'm more on the heavier side, like it's hard. I'm really bad at swimming. Like, I'm not really good at anything, but then I found rowing, and somehow it just was a match.
And so how did that journey happen for you? And also, like, what kind of barriers did you face because of, I mean, I don't know how old you were when you started, but this notion that rowers should be these tall specimens of Greek mythology or something like this.
Well, first of all, like, I was not an athletic child. Like, I was not good in sports or anything. Like, it was definitely not in my mind that I was going to go to the, like, I didn't even know what the Olympics were until, I don't know, like, definitely in my teens, or late into my teens. And yeah, I don't know, it was more, my brother and I are only 1.5 years apart, and I have 2 younger siblings as well, so it was kind of the brother that's 1.5 years apart, plus the other 2, they were like, we were always kind of like a bit twins in terms of like doing stuff together from the age, in terms of the age. And so we were just trying to kind of find a hobby, and because we grew up in a town really close to a lake, we spent a lot of time at the lake, like summer, winter, didn't really matter. And then I don't remember seeing the rowers, but my mom always said, like, we always watched the rowers on the lake. And then it was kind of like, yeah, why not? Well, try it. And then we tried also climbing, because we spent a lot of time in the mountains as well. We actually tried horse riding, just because, like, I really like the animals itself. Like, but obviously that's just like insanely expensive.
4 kids and horse riding would be wild.
Forget it. So yeah, exactly. And then kind of liked rowing, I guess. And I always liked the fact that it was outside, like you're out in nature, and yeah, I mean, being on the lake is nice. I guess the barrier I had in the club I grew up was just, I was the only girl. So I was like, either you had to do it with like other boys, or I had to do it in the single. And that's kind of like how I then probably ended up being in the single for
crazy
99% of my career.
Yeah.
Because it has carried through, like, when I wanted to really try to become an international rower and chase the Olympic dream, there were no other women having the same goal, and for a long time, like, the Swiss women's team was 3 people. It was Patricia and Fred as the lightweight double, and me in the single. So that's kind of like been a barrier through my career, if you want to call it barrier. But I guess if you look at it in a different way, for me, it's also now looking back, I realize like I was the one that paved the way. Now the women's team in Swiss rowing is really, really big.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like, I drifted away a bit, but that's how I got into the sport. Yeah, and barriers, I guess my height was always like, yeah, you're too small, like you're not gonna make it. Like I've had people saying that to my face.
Really? Multiple times?
Yeah.
Wow.
People doubting that I can make it.
Is that literally how they say it? Like you're not gonna make it, quote unquote? Like
I can't. I think I cannot 100% remember the exact words.
yeah.
But definitely like my height being the reason of like it's not gonna be possible.
Wow.
Was mentioned, and
Yeah.
also more like, you know, like not giving me a chance in a way because of the prejudgment of like your height is just not
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah.
And just kind of making it maybe slightly harder than it needed to be for me to
Yeah.
access stuff that I needed in terms to see like how far can I take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe putting extra hurdles into
Yeah.
my path.
Yeah.
In a way.
Whereas maybe if you were 10, 15 centimeters taller, they'd be all over it, right?
Yeah,
and you'd be like,
exactly.
here are these resources.
Yes, that's yeah.
And instead they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to fight for what I wanted a lot. But yeah, I mean, at the time it was hard. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's just like, it builds your character. Like, it makes you better at the end of the day. And yeah, a lot of the things I wouldn't want them to be any other way.
I'm curious, like, how do you learn to fight? Like, if you don't grow up watching the Olympics or whatever, and you don't have this kind of abstract goal that's been brewing in your mind for so long, how do you go from kind of doing all these different sports, kind of maybe allegedly watching rowing at the lake, and then it being something you fight for? Like, where do you have role models, or how do you learn to do that?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. I think I said I wasn't an athletic child, but I was really competitive within myself.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember really vividly is like I took hours and hours to perfect my school books, like
What?
writing. Like if I made a mistake, like I ripped out the page and wrote the whole page again.
Oh my gosh.
So I think this like maybe the high expectations of myself, like to do what I do to the best of my ability.
Wow.
This was definitely something I had within me from a very early age. But it wasn't like the competitiveness of like my school book has to look the nicest, because it wasn't about me comparing myself to others. It was just like the expectation I had of myself.
Wow.
Being like this really high bar.
Wow.
And I think that carried through in what I did and who I am today. And it's been obviously serving me well in high performance sport.
Yeah.
And then like probably winning some of the stuff like builds a bit this feeling of like I want to win, but at the same time was always just about like how good can I be.
Wow.
And yeah, I think that's been a huge part of why I made the career I made.
Do you think you ever experienced the perfect rowing stroke?
No, I think it's like drawing a circle, like free by your hand, like you never make it.
Yeah.
Or you always think, oh, the next one I can do it better. But what I have experienced is like this flow that
Yeah.
like high performers, not only in sport, like talk about. And then I guess like the strokes you take during the flow, they feel like
Yeah.
perfect.
Right. Yeah.
But as we know, perfection doesn't exist. So.
But maybe in that flow, there's just like an absence of judgment about that, right? Like if you had a video being taken of you when you were in that flow and then you watch that later, maybe there's a chance you would say like, oh, that's not perfect, or what.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But in the
for
moment,
sure.
it feels, just because everything is like, I don't even know how to even verbalize the like bleeding of togetherness of whatever.
Have you experienced that?
I feel like I have, because I've had like 2Ks on the erg where I don't even know what happened after, and they were so good. And I don't want to say they went by quickly because they never go by quickly, but I've like gotten off and I was like, whoa, what was that kind of thing?
Okay. I like the aspect of you saying like, I couldn't remember
Yeah.
any of it. And I think that's a huge part of what I describe as flow as well. Like you absolutely are in the moment. Like you don't remember what happened.
Yeah.
Like if I had to recollect the race afterwards, I was like, I don't know what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it just happened. And people always think like you think about being in the flow, like you think
Right.
about being loose, you think about any, and
Yeah.
actually for me it's like not thinking at all, like your mind is just empty.
Yeah.
And then like magical things happen. Yeah.
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 Yeah,
So
that
these are
absence
things,
of,
yeah.
I feel you.
Absence of, I don't know, like judgment, absence of anything basically, just absence of thoughts.
And I think, I don't want to like give false information, but I feel like somewhere in my bachelor's studies in psychology, I read a few things about it also being like altered brain waves that were kind of somewhere similar to the stages you go through before you fall asleep, stuff like this, which is an altered state of consciousness, which would make sense why you don't have conscious judgments or thoughts or whatever.
Yeah, I guess like people that are into meditation,
Yeah.
I would say they probably know this feeling.
Yep.
So I think it's probably similar to being in like this meditative state. But at the same time, meditation often happens like when you're still.
Yeah, true.
So
Yeah.
when you're active and in a race, you have some physical pain.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more difficult maybe to not go into the pain, but
Yeah.
just stay in the moment.
Yeah.
And people, I think they don't realize how much training it takes. Like actual focus of like letting your thoughts come and then let them go again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That takes years of training, of practice. And also I think there's like maybe a difference between high flow and low flow. Because high flow, I would say I maybe had in my careers of 10 years of professional rowing, I would say I maybe had maybe 5 times. And low flow, I would say I had at least like 3-4 times a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
In like training sessions.
Yeah.
But I think you need low flow to be able to progress to high flow kind of.
The practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were some of those high flow experiences?
I definitely have like a standout. People always ask me like, what is your favorite race or what is your favorite success? And for me, it's difficult to compare them. Like it's basically not impossible. It's basically not possible because every race is different. Every race had like a different preparation, so it's not possible to compare them. But the standout race for me definitely, or one of the standout races, was the World Championship in 2017 when I won, because there, like also the whole World Championship week, just personally, I was in this like amazing flow in terms of like I accepted myself 100% for who I was, like 100% for like what my body looked like. Like I was just so at peace with the time in my life, like where I was at, and also so grateful for what I've experienced so far, and like all the hardship I had to go through, and just so grateful to be at this point. And I think that was the base for me to then physically execute the race I wanted.
Wow.
And then it all came together, and that's why this race stands out, and not because of I won the world championship title. That was just a beautiful byproduct of it that I am still really proud of. But I also had, I guess, like races before, like semi-final at my very first Olympic Games, where I made the final, where I definitely had this feeling of flow, but I was probably not quite aware that it was this.
Yeah.
And a few races after, but I think, the standout to me was definitely that race.
Wow. Super beautiful. I got really emotional there for a second when you started. I don't even, oh my gosh, I'm not the right person for this podcast, obviously, if I cried everything. But when you started talking about self-acceptance and this, it was like, wow, I felt that like come over me. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, but that's just moments. Like I also have, I guess, if you have the high, you also have the low.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so hard on myself. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, having this high expectation of myself
Yeah.
comes with a cost, and sometimes it can be really destructive. So there's
Yeah.
also a depth to that is, whew.
Yeah.
Sometimes, maybe in most recent years, I sometimes surprise myself like how deep I actually go in terms of like self-destructive thoughts towards myself.
Yeah. Wow.
So I think, to know the highs, you also need to know the lows. Yeah.
But then I can imagine that week that you just described, such a weight off your shoulders to kind of allow yourself to accept yourself when these thoughts are always like coming in.
Yeah, I think maybe what was easy then was there was no outside expectation really. It was like, well, it's a world championship, and like I wasn't necessarily the underdog, but no one really had me on the radar, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe from like having done well that season, like in the previous races, people were aware that it's going quite well, but still I was like this small athlete that, from Switzerland, like Switzerland didn't really ever had someone winning a medal in the heavyweight women's section. It was just not really something that people had on their radar. So I was maybe less under pressure from the outside, and the self-destructive thoughts, they also happen for me to like, it was connected to, well, afterwards, like I'm a world champion, so I should be able to do this, or like I should be good at this, or I should be able to, I don't know, execute that because it's fucking easy compared to a world championship race, like things like this. And then you go down this spiral with maybe external things influencing it, not necessarily in the best way. And there you have the perfect mix for like something really toxic and unhealthy.
What happens then in those? Is it like a day? Is it a week? Is it a moment? And how do you get out of that?
Oh yeah, how to get out of that? That is a good question.
Get a shovel, start digging.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how it happens, but I think what I just said about this like self-talk of like, well, I've achieved this, so I should be able to do that because that's like easy, Like,
yeah.
And how to get out of it. Yeah, I think it takes this leap of faith in terms of like, well, just you have to choose, like you choose how you talk to yourself. So you can choose this way or you can choose this way. And I think being really honest with yourself in terms of like, well, I can change this. Like it's my own voice. It's not someone else saying that to me. And yeah, I think that for me, that's one way how I can get out of it, to just remind myself, like, I have a choice. Like, I have a choice, and I can be kind to myself or I can be not. And the less I am, the more I feel like my body's not doing what I want. And then obviously the self-talk gets worse.
Yeah.
So my body is not doing what I want more, like has this negative downward spiral. And then the other way, you feel like, oh, I was maybe a bit kinder today to myself and everything felt a little bit lighter. So maybe I try again tomorrow. So it's always, I think this kind of like the reaction that the mind and the body have with each other, like they play, or they're so closely intertwined. And this proof of like, oh, I was a little bit kinder, so like let's try it again tomorrow, then helps you kind of turning the spiral the other way.
I think one of the difficult pieces with that is that you kind of need to catch yourself in the act a little bit, right?
Yes, 100%. Like I think that's one thing that I really appreciate about the single. It's like you cannot escape from yourself. Like you have to face it, otherwise it's over before it started. Like you have to be so aware. Or for me, it was one of the big reasons why I think I'm good at what I'm doing, because I'm self-critical, but also like I look myself in the mirror in many different ways, literally, and like also just from the experiences I have, that like I don't want to escape from myself, because otherwise life's miserable. Like really miserable. So but those are hard moments. Like
I think it's hard to break out of patterns of like self-criticism when it's a voice that's just been for years and years, even from your childhood. If it's not about sport, about something else, it's really, really hard to catch it and then say, wait a second, we can do better. We can be nicer to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then to say something positive. Oh my gosh, like, I don't know, can you take a compliment well?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I think that's, I struggle with that. But like you say, like so much is connected to how we were, how we grew up, how we got taught things, like what to do, what to not do, what we're capable of, what we're not capable of. Like so much is instilled in us, like from this very, very early stage.
Yeah.
And to change that is like huge, like takes time. Like
yeah. Do you practice like self-talk or anything like that?
I would say not so much. I think I observe myself a lot, and I'm quite aware of maybe more the things I'm thinking, and sometimes the things I may be saying to myself, but I wouldn't say like I'm so big on self-talk, but it depends also a bit how you define it. Like actual conversations with myself, probably not so much.
Like out loud?
No.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Like this.
No.
Yeah. But like, I mean, it's so hard to say because I am not inside your brain and I don't know what your self-talk sounds like. But I think everyone has a little bit of an inner dialogue of like, okay, I'm going through my day, la-di-da. And then these kind of intrusive or anxieties about anything might come in. And I think when they come with emotion, then it's really hard to like reflect on them. And so I'm curious, like when the emotions are high around some kind of event that's important, or you're feeling these like external pressures, is there an increased difficulty in being aware and being reflective?
I think maybe then it's not so much about self-reflection, but again, observing maybe what your self-talk is or the thoughts you are thinking, and being aware of the choice you have. Like, because there's always two sides. Like, there's always two sides you can focus on. You can focus on the negative thinking or negative thoughts, or on the positive ones. But obviously, often we choose to go the easier route because we're just
Human.
conditions like this as human beings. We go what we know well, which is mostly the negative talk. But I think for me, it's always this kind of like remembering, like, I have a choice. Like, I can choose whether to focus on the negative things or the positive things. And that puts the responsibility on myself.
Yeah.
And the feeling of like, there's just nothing I can do about it. Like, it's just not true. And that's what I mean, like looking at yourself in the mirror. And that's scary. Like, it's hard. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but we all have this choice. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just something I try to do when I realize, okay, I'm under pressure here and I want to do things right. And you can't just forget about the negative side. Like, it's not possible to not think about it, but acknowledge it's here and then choose to focus on what serves you better.
So do you find, let's say there's this dialogue with like the angel and the devil or whatever, is it, you can say, okay, now I have this choice. I'm going to choose to focus on the positive. Does that negative like keep coming back? Like, do you have to keep fighting it off? You know, because then I feel I've become more and more aware of that inner dialogue in myself. But it's so hard. Like, it comes with some really good ammo sometimes because it's got a lifelong experience of like things that I've screwed up or whatever. And it's so hard for me to be like, no, I have a choice. I'm choosing positive, and like just getting bombarded because it's fighting. It wants to stay in the picture, right?
Of course, yeah. I think the important thing is to like being aware that it's here. Like, it's never going to go away. And it probably has had like moments where it served you well. Like, it's also some form of protection.
Yeah, yeah.
So it has a right to be there. And I think kind of like this very, like, if I say it like this, it sounds very simple, but just like kind of saying to it, like to the negative or to the devil, let's call it,
Yeah.
just telling him like, hey, look, I know you're here.
Yeah.
You deserve to be here, but I choose the angel for now.
Yeah.
But you're here, and I acknowledge you're here, and I know you've served me well in the past, but like, focus on the angel. And I'm pretty sure, like, or at least for me, then it's calmed down.
Yeah.
Because it knows, like, okay, she's not going to forget about me. She's not going to get rid of me, because that's not possible. But
Yeah.
so that's kind of a strategy maybe that worked for me.
I love that. I try and do that when it comes to emotions, like not trying to fight them, like let the experience of emotions happen. But emotions tend to go away sometimes
Quicker.
faster than those intrusive thoughts, depending on who you are. So that's something that I struggle with, a lot. I'm curious, like, when did you first realize that you were having like these tendencies to not be as positive with yourself?
I think it comes with the high expectations, like, and probably that's something that started in my childhood, I guess, of like feeling like I have to do well in some way for others to acknowledge me or something like this. I wouldn't say it was in a very big way like that, but definitely kind of one way how it might have started. And
but at that point you didn't realize it was destructive,
no,
right?
Yeah. I think, to be honest, like as aware as I'm about it now, it's only been 4 years, something like this, or even less. Like so, at 30 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably in 10 more years, you're going to look back on today and be like, girl, you had no clue.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no clue,
Yeah.
but like, well, that prepared me for hopefully what I will know from in 10 years time from now. And kind of, I see it as a bit like going to school. Like, obviously you learn something in second grade to be able to learn what you have to learn in third grade. So at 30, I learned a lesson that I probably needed to learn in order to be able to learn the lesson at 40. I don't know, I look at it like this a little bit.
Yeah. But there wasn't like kind of a singular, we call it like a breakthrough moment where you would have been like, hey, okay, I need to practice being better to myself.
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. It was kind of a gradual process, being more aware of like, oh, actually I'm doing this and it's not really serving me well.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like how can we transmit these lessons on now to someone who isn't there yet? You know, like someone who isn't aware of that.
The question is, do they want to be aware of it? I think that's the thing it comes down to. Like, not everyone wants to do work on themselves. Like, that's just how it is. And that's fine. Like, for me, again, it's a choice. We have so many choices. And so, yeah, if they don't choose to do it, then I don't want to force it on them. And again, what I just said, like, I think some people, like, maybe if someone talks to me about something now that I think I don't get it,
right,
in 10 years' time, I understand it, but I don't have the capacity to understand it now because I'm not at the right point or moment in my life. So I think some of it, it's like, like people are at different stages in their lives, and some realize it at 20, others at 30, others at 50, like, I don't know.
But is there like a message, if we could time travel or whatever, that you would give to your younger self or like your 20-year-old self?
Oh my God. Yeah, I guess 2 messages. One's really like to really trust your intuition and like your gut. That takes so much bravery, and especially today where we have social media and everyone knows it best and blah blah blah. That's so hard. Like, it's so hard. And we always have an opinion about things, like, even if we don't mean it in a judgmental way, like, we always, like, telling other people, hey, great, like, it's positive, but at the same time, it's a judgment. Yeah. So, to block out this and just listen inward, that's just been something that I was probably lucky to be taught in a way from a young age and has carried through until now. And I'm so grateful to have learned this skill, and also probably through sport perfected it. Perfected is probably the wrong word, but just been able to work on it and lean on it as well. Sometimes. And the other one is probably a mix between like embrace who you are and stay true to yourself always. But that takes time. Like that's something I know, like in your teens you have no clue who you are, and then you slowly start building maybe this understanding of who you are, or that's not something, I mean, it never stops, but it's probably something that I think is really important, and starts with like, what are your values in life? And some of them may change over time, but mostly I think they are the same from like the day you're born until you die.
Really?
Yeah. Like the true core values, I think they stay with you like your whole life.
But how could you have values from so early? Like, you don't think you're taught them? Or you think there is something very like intrinsic to you?
I think there is one aspect of us that like we come to this world as a person, like we have a personality. Obviously it gets influenced and shaped by the circumstances, by upbringing, by many factors, but the core who we are, some of it is here like the day we're born or produced or whatever you want to call it.
Produced.
I mean, when does it start? Like, where does it start? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been confronted about this question, like, more from the other side, from, like, death. Like, when is a person dead? Like,
Yeah.
if I logically think about it, like,
Yeah.
it's fucking crazy. And the same, like, if you think about it, like, birth, like, when is a person born, as in, like, when does the physical and the non-physical come together? Like, so
like if two people have an idea to have a kid together, does that already
like where do you start?
Yeah.
So I think some of it like is like we are who we are, and then obviously influenced by upbringing and so on. And the beliefs, or maybe not the beliefs, the values, they come probably with some of the personality that we have. So I think some of it, we definitely bring when we are born, or like I said, I don't know where you want to start. And the rest is, sure, influenced by upbringing and so on.
Was there ever a time that you felt like you weren't being true to who you are? Or going in that other direction?
No, I think that's really one thing that also, if people ask me about, like, again, like, what's your biggest success? And for me, it's like being able to say, like, I always feel like I've been true to myself. I stay true to myself. It's been so hard at points. And it was definitely not the easy choice. But at the same time, it's been the most rewarding.
What makes it hard? Can you give me an example? Like the media, or what is it?
I guess like maybe not being liked, like for a decision you take because it's against someone or against something, or like something bigger than one person. A group or an association, or I don't know, like a group of people, or whatever it can be. But also it's not just this, it's, I think, like really listening to my voice of like, what do I want to do, like in terms of for example, my profession.
Yeah.
That's something I think people or children or young adults are influenced a lot by parents, and then it's like, well, they want you to go study, but maybe you're actually wanting to be, I don't know, a cook because you love food. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But then that's maybe not good enough in terms of like the picture the parents have. And so that's another example of but kind of staying true to yourself. But that's hard because then you have to tell your parents maybe like, no, sorry, I'm not going to study. Like,
was there something in your family, like an expectation that your parents had, or?
No, I don't think there was. I think the expectation was to like just do like one thing that gives you this kind of security to always fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, if you want to do an apprenticeship, that's fine because then you always know you can go back to this and gives you this stability and security.
Mm-hmm.
And other than this, I think, or I feel like we were pretty free to choose whatever we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also pretty sure no one saw me going to pursue athletic career.
Do you remember, was there anything you wanted to be like as a kid when you would grow up?
Yeah, I wanted to work with babies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously probably because I'm the oldest of 4 siblings.
Yeah.
I've always been the one like kind of looking after the younger ones and taking responsibility for them, and I just feel like they're really close to maybe the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And that's always been fascinating to me, and kind of this, in a way, this bridge between what we understand and logically can explain and what we don't understand maybe logically, and some of it maybe can't explain. So that's why I've always been fascinated by babies, and that's, for a long time I wanted to work with babies because of that.
Wow, I thought you were going to say horses. But so interesting. So you've always kind of had, like, even from a younger age, like these tendencies to think about those kind of existential questions more?
I don't think so, no. It's more just realized probably early on that's maybe more than just what I can see. That's, I remember that. But maybe comes a bit with being aware of nature from a very early age. Like I said, like being around the lake, being in the mountains, and just kind of experiencing also the change in seasons that we have here in Switzerland. Just makes it like obvious that there are things that maybe aren't so explainable by science or whatever. And I think that I've been kind of aware from very early on, but I've never really thought about death before. What happened in December last year. So because I wasn't really confronted by it. And then it's more like thinking about life, but not necessarily death. But obviously, again, that's another example of like there's both sides to it. Like life can only happen if there's death, and death only happens if there's life. So like those two are just, they're here, and both of them are here, and that's been a realization I've gained, like I've not had before. Or not thought about it like this.
So how has the last almost a year, which is crazy, it's crazy, changed how you think about life? Such a small question. Welcome to...
I have to be careful to structure my thoughts here because there's so much that or maybe just my perspective has changed. Or I've gained so much perspective. It's probably the best word. It first and foremost, it kind of made me realize we think we appreciate life, but we don't. Like
Yeah.
We take things like, if I look at the blue sky now, I'm like, oh my God, like, because of so many reasons, like, it's beautiful. I have eyes that can see the blue sky. And the realization that some people don't. Like, there's so many things that go into this, and the gratefulness for me to be able to see it and like have, for example, a healthy body and walk in the mountains and see it better, or experience it a whole day, or things like this, like that. That's just one example of like many things that, in terms of gaining perspective, is what I mean. And then I think the realization that sadness and happiness, they can exist next to each other. I always thought that when you lose a person, or like a family member, or like a loved one, or someone really close to you, like there's this like dark hole of sadness, and that's definitely true. But there is space for happiness next to it, and that's been interesting to realize. Like, probably that like grief looks nothing like you learn or read about it, or actually can't read a lot about it, because you really have to look for it. Like, you have to almost do research, because there's not just something out there that it's easily accessible, which is also something I was really surprised to realize, like how much it's there, like how many people have come forward, told me like, oh, I've had this experience, but like we just don't talk about it, and that it's highly individual. Like, you cannot compare one single story to another. And I think the best example is like, obviously I'm really close with Robin's sister now, and we lost the same person, but to her he was a brother, and to me he was a partner. And our journeys are so different because of this, but we lost the same person. So that's really interesting. And I mean, it's hard to say on the spot right now, but it's just so many little things as well.
What about like what you said before? We talked about like, when is a person really a person, or when would they come? What's the other end of that?
Yeah, I think at the beginning that the whole journey of grief, because it's so highly individual, again, it's been for me an opportunity to be in tune with myself. And I guess more than ever, I was grateful to have this skill learned through my career, through the 32-ish, 33 years I had on this earth, of like being in tune with myself. So it kind of like made me, to my surprise, first thing was like, when this happened, was like, wow, okay, what do I want of life now?
Wow.
And this is something, it's like a little bit contradictory.
Because it's about you.
Yeah,
you mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It was like, wow, this person is just gone, and this was basically the most important person to me. And the first question like that really strongly came up.
Wow. Yeah.
Was like, what now for me?
Yeah.
Which was like, really, really interesting. But again, like, that's something I was like, wow, okay, that's an opportunity. Like, I looked at it as an opportunity to kind of find out more about myself.
Yeah.
And I guess I really followed through with it in terms of like, okay, what does feel right for me now, and what do I want to do? And I definitely haven't got the answers, but I've not stopped like following the question. And I think knowing myself more now through those 9 months is on a level that I've not had the chance before, not through sport, not through nothing, which on one hand is like such a gift, but on the other hand, obviously the price I had to pay for it is like unreal. So this ambivalence is everywhere now. This is definitely something like I cannot look at something and not think about mainly the price I had to pay, or that there's someone that can't, whatever it is. Like Robin doesn't know that I'm here now, or maybe he does, but like you know, like things like this. So that's new. That's definitely new. Like this, it's always there, and it's I mean, it's like a mark that's gonna stay, and it's forever. Like it's forever changed me, and but so much about what I experienced, everything. Like there's also so much gratefulness, like for how it happened, that I could be there, and that's something I think helped me a lot in my personal journey of like the grieving bit about losing someone. Like I was so grateful to be able to kind of, sounds so strange, but like be there when it happened, because I felt like we were such a good team in everything, and even though I couldn't do anything, like I was there, and I was able to follow through the very last steps that he took on this earth, literally, and that meant so much to me, and I'm so grateful it happened that way, because it could have happened in another way where, I don't know, I wasn't there or got the news on the phone, which happened to his sister, and for me, I think that's, to imagine that is so incredibly hard, so I'm really grateful for how it happened for me.
Yeah, I like this, what you said at the beginning with this like coexisting of the dark and the light. I mean, it ties in also to what we talked about before with the negative and the positive. And I think this idea of like we have to be either super stoked or no, now I'm not doing well, and that it can't be like this constant flux. I think it would like definitely serve us better if we would be able to live like that on so many levels, like even not just in terms of loss, but in terms of our mood and waking up and saying, hey, I'm just feeling a little bit like down today, but I know that that doesn't make me a down person. And I know that there is still some like stokedness in me, but it's like hiding today, and that's okay, because maybe tomorrow it'll be a little bit more and this will be a little bit less. And like similar about, I'm sure you have days that are way worse, way darker, or way lighter.
I think that's something like so well said, what you just said. Like that's so true, and grief definitely taught me that that they're both here, like, and it's not a tragedy if one day you feel more sad, like the next day you feel better again. As I guess also this kind of realization of like everything passes, like nothing is permanent. Because the change in myself when I look back on like how I was in January to compare to how I'm now is like huge. And maybe I've done something, like some things purposely in terms of working on myself, being in tune with myself, listening to myself, things like this. But at the same time, even if I wouldn't have done that, time, like life goes on. And so every day, like, again, I can refer for me back to nature. Like every evening you've got the chance to let things go with the sun or whatever is setting, and next morning, like especially if it's like today or the whole week, like you get up with the sun and it's you have new possibilities. Like, that's just like this. Yeah, and tomorrow isn't granted. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's been shown to me like in a such drastic way. But yeah, I couldn't agree more on the fact that like we don't have to be just happy or just sad. Like,
Yeah.
we can be in the middle, and both of these things, they're always going to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel sometimes we just want to like be obsoletely something, you know, or like you can't be an athlete, but also sleep all day on the sofa and eat 20 bags of chips or whatever, right? It's like we have such a problem of like, oh, I don't fit into this box today. I think even it's such, I mean, I don't even want to bring it in relative to this conversation, but something of like, okay, let's say now I'm a cyclist and I do a lot of cycling, and I can still be proud of myself for going for a 45-minute spin when all my friends went for 7 hours and did like 20 million whatever that day. But that's so hard to do because you think you're like, if I want to be a cyclist, I have to do what everyone else is doing. Or, I mean, it's not the same scale, but it's the same principle of like...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's everywhere. Like, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how has it been now for you, like, being officially retired from sport? And I know you've spoken a bit about like detraining and going through this process of physically leaving your sport and that schedule that you had that was like so rigorous. How do you approach this idea of like, okay, I'm still very much probably inside an athlete, but things are changing?
Yeah, I mean, my situation was really extreme. So obviously that's something people, like, you can say it, like people can maybe understand it rationally or logically, but they have no clue. And you can't imagine how much grief just sucks all of your energy out of you.
Yeah.
So I was confronted with this life-changing fact of Robin passing away. And the first thing that changed for me was physically, like, I couldn't eat. Like, I had absolutely zero appetite. So as an athlete, where quite a lot of it evolves around food, fueling, that's been like a huge change. And if I wouldn't have had my sister there with me for like 3 weeks, I wouldn't have eaten, because there was zero motivation for me, like, to stand in the kitchen or prepare food or anything from a point of view like, like, why should I eat? Robin's not here anymore. Like, he's not eating. Like, why should I eat? Like,
yeah.
But also, like, absolutely zero, like, hunger. Like, no hunger at all. Yeah. So if I wouldn't have had someone there, like, cooking me meals or like saying like sit on this table and eat, I wouldn't have eaten. Yeah. And the other thing that was like straight away all over the place was obviously sleep, which is also a huge factor of, well, physical activity being possible. Yeah. Depends on like some amount of sleep. So two very existential things being all over the place. And then obviously like the emotional pain being at its max. There's absolutely zero space for physical pain. Yeah. Like, even if going for a 30-minute bike ride isn't pain, but like there's no capacity. Yeah, but there wasn't for me. Like,
does it even go into your mind at all?
No. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was, and again, like I said, like, that's hard for people to imagine. It was literally about surviving. Yeah. And that's now, because I've gone through, I know what it feels like. And other people are faced like with surviving in terms of like they don't want to live anymore. And I didn't have that. Like, I definitely straight away felt like, well, I probably still have something to do in this world, and I know there's still beautiful things waiting for me. And so I wasn't faced with like not wanting to live, but definitely questioning like why am I still here, and like what's the point, of all this, and that carried through until now. Like what's the point of us, like what's the point of we sitting here? It's just time killing. Like what are we doing? Like we're funny if you think about it, like zooming out and watching the world from above. It's like you see the little cars running around.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Everyone's busy.
What are we doing?
Going
like,
somewhere. I have to be there right
Yes.
now. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
emails. Hang on.
yeah. And how like we take ourselves like so important when it's like when we're like no.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was in a way like funny, but also like it was hard. That was so hard. And then obviously at some point I had to kind of reassess. Okay, like my job at the time was being a professional athlete, which meant like 5-ish hours of training a day. And I struggled eating. So like, how can I do my job? I can't. I literally can't. And as an athlete in Switzerland and probably some other places in this world as well, like you can't just go to the doctor and say like, can you write me sick for 3 months? Like, forget it. It's just not possible. So yeah, for me, there was no other choice than, I can't do my job, so I have to quit my job, basically. And not from a point of view of I can't do my job physically. It's more like there's no space in my mind, like I said before, like for physical pain, like physical.
Yeah.
I had no energy. I had no energy. And I mean, as an athlete, like how hard is that? Like being used to so much movement, training, and I love training. Like I mean, every time I say this, like how many people are saying like, oh my God, like normally athletes just like competition. And that is probably in most cases true, but I love both. And I've always loved training. And so that was really hard to just feel like grief is
sucking everything out.
Yes, sucking everything out of me. And also because I'm in the because I was in the single and so much of my life like so self-dependent in terms of like deciding what I want, deciding what I'm doing, I felt like someone else was 100% in control. And it was grief, and that was really hard. And not knowing like what's the time frame, like when is this gonna stop, or when is this gonna end, or wishing for it to end, but at the same time like you don't want it to end because you don't want to forget about this person. And a lot of it is just, in lack of a better word, a complete mindfuck. And so I definitely started doing like some form of like, let's call it movement, maybe in the 4th week after it happened.
Wow.
Just to have like a little bit of like it gave me some structure to my day. And also obviously we know that sport, even on a really low level at that time, like releases positive endorphin, like it helps you with your mood. And I mean, I have like a training space, you've seen it. Going in there was the hardest thing ever. Because we've built it together. And we put our heart and soul into it. And I mean, it was the hardest but also best thing, because it was like hard to go there, feel the spirit of Robin being there, but at the same time, like, why would I not want to be there? Like, it's a place where I know he was so happy, and like it feels like it's close, like you're close to him. So it's like, again, this kind of mindfuck. In a practical example of like, it's the best and the hardest thing at the same time, going in there. And that was for a long time, but because I just kept going, obviously it gets better. Like time carries on and like gets easier with doing like everything. Like if you do it first time, it's so hard, and then you do it and over again, it gets easier and easier, and you get better at it. And then probably after like it took good half a year where I started to feel like more like myself again in terms of the energy, like appetite was slowly coming back, like my sleep got better, and just everything kind of started to feel like more normal again. And also the feeling of like wanting to do like some physical, maybe more challenging physical things definitely came back, and now I would say it's pretty much back to normal. We're like you said, like now a bit more than 9 months in, so it's quite a long time that it took to get me, I would say, to a place where I feel like myself again, and I feel like I have the energy, and also I'm in control of grief. Like I have moments where I purposely choose like to look at Robin's picture, and I can't, I get sad, like there's nothing else I can do other than getting sad. And but it's a choice now, whereas at the beginning I would probably more of the times I would avoid it because it just would make me maybe more sad. And now it's more of a choice in terms of like, I want to give him this time, like, and it's a form of showing love. Like, again, as strange as it sounds, it's kind of a mindfuck, but it's a form of showing love now, to choose like to being sad, crying maybe, and spend this time looking at his picture.
But so it sounds like you didn't, like when it came to you being physically active after retiring, it wasn't really this point of like, okay, I was a world champion, I should be able to do this, because it's a completely different topic at this point, right?
Yeah, like I said, it was about surviving. It was about literally like being able to get up the next day and like feel like there's something for me to do in this world again still. So and I guess because they were just like exactly at the same moment, there wasn't this like detraining phase really, or maybe started much later, because I just had no choice. Like I was not able to do more than 20 minutes of moving my body for a very long time. I would do the odd ride of like maybe 1 or maybe 2 hours when the weather was nice, because just that was something I felt like is giving me more than it took maybe. But this as well, because I know like how much Robin loved to ride his bike. Like that was hard as well, like going on a ride on my own. Like
it's hard not to find connections for literally probably every single thing. I mean, even when we had our like sushi night, it's everything, but it's also beautiful at the same time, right?
But again, like that's the ambivalence that I was saying. Like there's sadness everywhere now, but at the same time, like so many moments where I smile and think, I know you're here, like I know this is for you, like things like this. And that's maybe where I have like little conversations with myself, or him, or whoever you want to say, like whoever he is with. But definitely, more aware of that now.
And how do you see like your sport participation evolving? I know you have a couple things planned.
Yeah, so I mean, for a while I also like had a really hard time kind of going near rowing. Obviously for good reasons. I never kind of wrote off rowing completely, like, because I know some athletes, like when they stop rowing, like they never touch a boat again, like would never ever go near a boat ever again. And for me, I knew definitely that was not going to be the case, even though now, I mean, it's so like like Robin died when I was rowing, so there is a
Yeah.
really close connection. But because of the whole circumstances, like, and me being grateful for how it happened, like there's maybe more of a positive connection, if you want to call it like that. Like, it's definitely not positive because he's not here anymore, but so I knew, like, I will be going rowing again. I will be near a rowing boat again. And I got asked to coach at the Sea Club. And at the beginning, obviously, having had Robin as this amazing coach, inspiration, teacher, it was a little bit daunting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it made me realize, like, how much he did for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was beautiful, but also really hard again. For A, not having it anymore, and B, kind of not being able to, like, appreciate it towards him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, also because I'm maybe more introvert person, being a coach, you, like, have to put yourself out there a little bit more, maybe. And I have a very good picture of, like, the rowing stroke and how I want to move my boat, but it's all in my head. Like, so how do you communicate this to other people? And what makes sense to me might not make sense to other people.
Especially
so, like,
young people.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was kind of a challenge in itself, but with the added kind of, like,
emotions
and, like, circumstances, it was pretty hard. But I would say I kind of found my way into it, and now I really enjoy it. But it's also because I've grown so much from, like, April, May, June to now. And it's been very interesting and very insightful and cool to see the rowing and the rowing stroke and just the whole sport from, like, the other side. So yeah, I think I don't have a clear picture. I decided in July to go to Boston to race at the head of the Charles, which is a race I've raced before. It's a beautiful city, and I'm gonna do it with Mark Shimin, who was, like, a father to Robin, and he's been my training partner in, like, 2019. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
So you've been obviously training a little bit for this now, or?
I've not really been rowing, to be fair. I've been out on the water a few times. I've been hiking and enjoying Switzerland at home. I've been riding my bike a lot, almost every day, which is really nice. Like, I mean, I love where I live because of the beautiful options we have to explore. And so I would say that there's probably a good amount of fitness that I've gained back from just being active outside of being on the water. But definitely will focus on a little bit more rowing going into this competition, because I still want to feel like I can give my best.
And what about outside of rowing? I know your mind is also similar to mine, turning a lot with ideas, and you've done some kind of, like, studies. Any new insights about directions you can see yourself?
I've always had the struggle of being interested in many different things.
Yeah.
I think working closely with a sports psychologist for the last 10 years, and this kind of maybe natural awareness of myself, and probably being in high performance sport, like, made me realize how much I like learning and maybe also teaching about, like, self-growth and authenticity and these kind of topics, and just how to develop yourself, basically. So when I stopped rowing, obviously it was really clear to me very quickly that I wanted to do something along these lines. And I did this certification to become what is called integral coach. You can call it life coach. It's a bit easier word for people to understand. Integral is just because it's coming from the approach of like seeing us human beings like with everything we have, like our mind, our soul, our feelings, like and so on. So
did you almost say blah blah blah? And you had to stop yourself.
yeah, almost. Just this holistic approach, like
did you pass the course now?
it's not finished. Like I haven't finished yet.
Yeah.
But I really liked it, and I chose it for a few different reasons. One of it was that I wasn't ready to commit to something like studies, like 2 years, because I knew that what might be right for me in like January, February wasn't necessarily going to be the right thing in like half a year or a year on. So it needed to be reasonably short, or at least like flexible with like the schedule and how I kind of integrate it with my life. And the other thing was like I said to myself, like, well, if I'm not gonna use it afterwards, at least it was like for myself.
Yeah.
And that's definitely ticked the box. Like now I realize like it was a huge part of me being aware of myself during the journey, because obviously learning about human beings in general, like there were also some questions that you had to ask yourself about yourself.
Yeah.
And also because we had to do quite a few practice sessions within our class. Obviously you have to choose a topic that you want to be coached on, so there was the opportunity to just look at things like closely. With different
somebody
people.
coached you?
Yeah.
Can you say like what the outcome of that coaching was?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being coached, even with like, it doesn't have to be like a problem or like a challenge you have in life. It can also just be like looking at your situation that you're in and just looking at things like closely. And sometimes or often you have to write down stuff, or you have to say out loud some of the things. They change, like they are different. Like maybe in your head they seem like this huge mountain, and then you say it and you're like, oh, actually it's not that bad, or like, it's not that big. Or there was one of the exercises or like one of the methods that we were taught that we could use in a coaching was like kind of making this wheel of your life with like slices, and like every slice was, I don't know, your family, your job, and then you had to give it like a number or a feeling. I can't remember which one it was, or maybe both. And then for me it was like, basically my life is amazing. And this realization was like epic. Like, I mean, I kind of knew it, but seeing it out like on a floor or on a table or on a wall with like your own words, your own writing, it's giving a different...
Especially when you're in grief, in a stage of grief, right? To still have that like objectively.
Yeah. So that's one really good example of why this course served me, no matter what I'm going to do with the result or like the certification.
Yeah.
Like I took so much with me from also opening the circle of people I was around, because obviously in high performance sport, like you limit the circle of people you interact with because you don't have time. And then also you always think about like, how can I be better? And you very much stay kind of within like the high performance environment, if you want to call it like that. But it was just like a bunch of people with like so many different stories at such different points in their lives, like old, young, male, female, like. And one funny anecdote actually is like the first day, like I think our class was like 10 or 11 people. And then obviously kind of you walk into this room and like everyone in a circle, kind of classic.
Oh, really? Like an AA meeting.
A little bit. And there was one guy, and his name was Robin, and I was in this class. I was like,
shit.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah.
Just, funny things like this.
Yeah.
But then I think we had a really cool class, and it was just really cool to meet all those people and see the similarities, but then also the differences.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, we got a new neighbor in our flat as well.
Oh, really?
Robin was the first Robin I ever met. And now this guy that lives in there, we only have one other neighbor in the flat, and his name is also Robin. Maybe it's just like you start looking for it more often, or...
Yeah, I mean, obviously now you look at the name Robin different in terms of, but I mean, that was it's just a funny, I don't know, kind of like, you're there like, what? Like, one guy.
Yeah.
His name's Robin.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? And sometimes there's nothing behind it, and sometimes you make up a story for yourself, and that's fine. Like,
do you ever get, like, whenever I see a big guy on a bike, I'm like, oh, just for like a split second, and you're like, obviously not, but does that ever happen to you, like in passing people by?
Not on the bike. One thing for me is more like the Ford Transit, like his van that he had. Those get me. Those get me. But that's also changed a bit now. Like, that was for a long time.
It's not as intense anymore. Yeah.
For a long time, it was like, this feeling like he's gonna call me any minute, or like walk through the door any minute. But that's different now.
This
obviously.
bad dream kind of feeling.
Yeah, but it's during the day. Like.
Yeah, but you just want to wake up from.
Yeah, but actually, your mind, like, playing a trick on yourself, like feeling like, he's gonna call, or like he's on holiday, something like this. Yeah. And then you realize, like, oh no, actually, this is not like. Yeah. It's really weird, but that was
so
kind
intense.
Yeah.
I know when you talked before about sleep too, I was like, sleep is so. I'm such an overthinker, and I have anyways like. I don't want to say clinically diagnosed anxiety, mild anxiety, self-diagnosed. And I think that if such an intense experience happened to me, I'd be like, no sleep for a month at least. Like, I don't know how you are now with that, but do you think a lot in bed?
I think I have like on and off, and like not the same or never the same, basically. I would say in general, quite easy with sleep, or like I probably have these moments as well before going to sleep of like thinking a lot, but to be honest, I wasn't having, like, some days I was like having trouble falling asleep. Some days it was more like at the beginning I woke up like so early, like I could have I was going to bed like probably later than earlier, so more like towards midnight, but like wake up at like 4:30, something like this. And then obviously for a few days, and then you're kind of in a really big, or me, I at least need like 7.5 to 8 hours to feel like I'm good. Or then like not being able to fall asleep and having to sleep like until like 9 or so in the morning, which I personally don't like, because I love mornings. Like, I'm such a morning person. So just like more being like all over the place and not knowing what it's going to be tonight. Like, is it going to be not falling asleep, or falling asleep but like wake up so early?
Wow.
But when I did sleep, I actually slept like okay, I would say. And I would only say I had like a couple of nights where I had like obviously a bad dream, or like was dreaming about him and then realizing, it's more like that, but not so much. Like I thought this would probably be more like that's something that maybe from, I don't know, films or society, it's what you think. But that's wasn't necessarily the case for me.
Crazy. I think, I mean, to also tie into what we talked a little bit about before, of like we're really busy in life and what are we all doing with this stuff? For me, it's like when I go to bed, that's when I start thinking any big question about myself, like whether it be like some kind of judgments on myself or reflecting on the day or whatever it is. That's usually the time where all of a sudden you don't have distractions. And so for me, everything comes in because all day you're busy with whatever else and you don't take time to think about these things.
That's interesting because for me, it's most often like, what do I have to do the next day or what is on my to-do list, on my agenda? For me, it's a lot about that when I go to sleep.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I have that a little bit too, but that won't keep me up long.
Yeah.
But like these existential things will, or just, I remember it's even from my childhood, I had such a hard time falling asleep. I would reread, this is before cell phone days, obviously, like just reread the same children's magazine 100 times and like not go to sleep. Or like my mom would check in on me, I'd turn off the lights and then I'd turn them back on. And like when I would put my head on the pillow at night, I would think I hear like robbers or something, or like the bump, bump, bump. And then I realized it's my heartbeat. But you think it's like someone walking to your house. Yeah. It's pretty intense. It's better now, but I just think it's interesting that as soon as you don't have distractions, a lot of this stuff tends to seep in. And that's kind of what I love about cycling or sport in general, is like it gives you a space to kind of let that stuff work through. And maybe it doesn't like super consciously, like you can just go mindlessly go do the sport, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree, definitely. And I think I mentioned before, like I'm such an introvert, so I actually need time on with myself.
Yeah.
And more than I probably did before, like take this time to kind of just be with myself, and then that's the time where all these questions are allowed to come up as well. Because other than that, we're just busy. Like we're also always kind of distracting us from it. Yeah. And I realized that early on with grief, like if you keep your mind busy, like you don't think about it, like there are moments where you forget about it, not because you don't remember it, but because your mind is busy with something else.
Crazy. Yeah.
So that's when this question starts, like, what are we doing here? We are keeping ourselves busy to not think. Yeah.
Because it's hard. Or yeah. Oh, it's so crazy, but it's so comfortable. Like it's so weird now. Like we're so used to being busy. It's so weird to just sit on a train, on a bench, wherever, and do nothing. Like especially for me, or maybe you also, like, because we're more physical. I'm like, what? I have to do something with my hands. Like even now, I've probably shifted positions like 800 times, and I don't know. It's just like, what is
Yeah, I find it interesting in terms of the phone because I cycled from here to Stuttgart. Yeah. So I had to have dinner out like twice or something like that.
By yourself.
Yeah. You sit there, and if you don't have your phone, it's like, what am I doing here? Like, it's so weird. Yeah. And not because I have a problem being on my own, but in like a public place. On your own, not having your phone, it's like, what's going on? It's so weird.
But here's a question. When you have like breakfast, lunch, whatever at home, are you doing something else at the same time? Or are you literally just sitting there eating?
Sometimes like either or, like not always the same. But obviously because of where I live now, I often take this opportunity to kind of like just look at that beautiful view.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I'm tempted to have my phone. Like,
I mean, I'm just saying because I can't remember the last time when I ate, unless it was like really in a hurry, like shoveling, like not a proper sit down meal without, I mean, we have these like shitty magazines that come and just flipping through it, or like pretending to read a German newspaper. I'm so rarely just sitting by myself. And it's so sad because like food is made to be enjoyed, but like somehow that is not enough stimulation for my mind.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling someone about this the other day. It's like I always in my head have like a cooking show going on when I'm cooking dinner for myself or whatever. And sometimes I'll talk out loud and pretend like you're laughing because you can picture it, because it's not enough for me to just be there cutting something. I have to explain and say, okay, so we're gonna dice this.
That's interesting.
Crazy, right? I know. I'm like I need to be, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like you have such a wild imagination probably because of that.
True. Yeah, it's again
because when I see like your videos, for example, on Ride Raw,
yeah,
like I love them. Like they are so simple, but like true and relatable.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you even think of this stuff? Like I love it. Like for me, this is like highly creative and such a skill.
Yeah.
So I can see why kind of those are connected a little bit. Like,
yeah. I think probably it's like this connection of whatever's going on inside my mind and feeling like it's okay to express that to the world somehow, or like taking that's probably what I'm trying to do, is like take the mess that is inside and put it outside a little bit, because all of those ideas started from a thought of like, oh, I don't like this last video where I was like, I saw a different guy make a video about like fashion no-goes, and I was like, this makes me so angry. And you know, the whole account, the whole community, it all started with this idea of like, if I don't say these things, who's going to do it, you know? Because there's so much shit going the other way. There's people saying like, oh, fashion no-goes, or like, you have to be perfect or whatever. And I'm like, if there isn't someone who's like that opposing voice, if someone else was doing it, I'd be like, fine, I have other things I can probably do. Although I do enjoy it sometimes, but it's like, I feel a bit of a responsibility to be that counter narrative. And just because I'm like, I get frustrated by things so easily, and instead of just like getting frustrated, I want to do something about it. Who knows what the impact, and it takes a lot to kind of put yourself out there like that, and it's a lot of effort, but I think it stems from this like constant inner world of, maybe I'm just trying to quiet, because also those things I lay in bed and I'm like, okay, can I rhyme these two words together? Like,
I love that.
Really, but it's a lot, because you're like, frick, I need to wake up tomorrow, I need to sleep, and I'm like, oh, Shimano, look, shoes, blah, 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 sunglasses, whatever. And it's, I know it's such a bad use of time, but also it's a little fire in me that's burning for some reason. Yeah. So we'll see.
I know for you it might be like annoying, but for me, like from the outside, that's exactly what I think. Like there's such a, like you said, it's fire. Yeah. I think, it's amazing. Like, crazy. Because for me, I would say, like, I would never dare to put myself out there in this way.
We're live. Just kidding.
But at the same time, like I said, like, if you say this little example of do these two words rhyme, that has for me so much to do with the creative aspect of it, which, like, I find it so cool.
Yeah, but also this wild imagination, it goes so quickly in the other direction. Like, I lay on my pillow at night and I think there's like someone trying to rob me, even though the sound is like just a heartbeat, right? So it just depends how you direct that energy. Yeah. Are you still doing like gym sessions?
Yeah. I love lifting weights. Yeah. I think I've always liked it, and I just personally, from like an aesthetic point of view, I like looking athletic. Yeah. I just like if you can see that someone's being active, I guess. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. Like when I was at my best, I still wasn't maybe looking like the most athletic person. Yeah. Because I'm just built a little bit more, like, not chunky, but I'm not ever going to be like lean. Yeah. So
Yeah, but your body's also like protecting itself, right?
Yeah.
When you're training
Yeah,
that
sure,
much and
sure,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I looked the other day at some pictures of myself from like 5-10 years ago, and it's just a different person. It's unbelievable how the sport, that purpose, can completely transform your body.
Yeah.
Or even, I think, just honestly living in Europe has made a big difference, because in Canada we would drive everywhere, and I think now I have to take the bike everywhere, and it's just a different lifestyle, so that even if I'm not training like an athlete, I feel people are more likely to think I'm an athlete now than maybe
Yeah.
10 years ago,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
crazy. But again, that's just like a social kind of construction of what we expect out of what athletes should look like and all that kind of thing. So
Yeah, we haven't talked about body image, but that's a whole other box we can open.
I know. I was just thinking if I should ask you. I'm like, we've been here for probably too long already. So when are you back from the States?
30th of October.
Okay. And then after that, some plans other than coming back?
Yeah, after that, I mean, my agenda's pretty empty, so there's space for me to come back. Do you have like a standard close-off that you want to be using
good
in the
question.
future? Or like,
Shit,
I
should
don't
we
know,
wrap it up somehow?
Name your, I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
Or just say yes or no to.
Give me like a beat. Like I want.
Oh no. No.
Okay, wait. Oh shit, that's a good point. Now I'm thinking it should be like about the,
I was just gonna say like we have to
tie that in.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, should I make it literal about like what's like the steepest thing you've encountered, whether it be like a literal mountain or a road or a race, or should it be more metaphorical? But then it's also at the end, you don't want to open up another can of worms. What do you think?
Well, I was thinking like it should tie in with like what's written on this wall here.
Yeah, shit.
But
okay, I have it.
Okay.
That was easy.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah.
Maybe it's not. What do you think? Would you rather go up something that's steep or go down?
Oh, good one. Probably up.
Why?
Because for me, up always means you probably get to some kind of top, or maybe even if you don't, at some point there's going to be a reward, which is the view. But that's just me because I'm a sucker for a good view.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah.
How perfect is that?
It,
I think that works, right?
Yeah,
We can wrap it
yeah,
up with that.
Yeah.
Okay, sick. Let's say the end.